I want to talk about free will. This is a topic that I've been coming across quite a bit, sort of in the intellectual circles in the Bay Area, some podcasts. Of course, Sam Harris, one of the big proponents of the sort of we don't have free will camp, and then David Deutsch, part of our principle stack, one of the books that we kind of build our whole principle stack on, The Beginning of Infinity, talking about sort of the let's say, the ability to exercise free will in a sense that you can be creative about finding solutions to problems. I want to apply it to the particular case of actually business problems and explain that my view is actually both. It's, let's call it Sam Harrisian and David Deutsch. And I'm the opinion that you are reacting to the environment. So I'm a Darwinian free will person, if you want. So I believe in free will. I believe that we have the ability to exercise our own will in terms of reacting to our environment. And that's where I believe we don't have free will, because we can't control our environment. So in that sense, I think the question is not, do we have free will or not? It's an irrelevant question on both sides. And I think rightly so, if you really follow the arguments of both sides, the people say we have free will and those we don't, it's kind of futile because it doesn't solve any problems. I think I'm offering a solution here, and the solution is that the real relevant thing is, how do I respond to my environment? How do I respond to problems that the environment throws at me? And in that sense, I don't have free will because I'm forced to respond. I can't choose my environment. Even if I choose to leave, that's a choice, that's a free will choice. So in a sense, I have free will to act creatively against problems that my environment poses at me. This is Not in Wrong podcast. It's September 23rd, 2021. This is Krim Delco. Since the last update, we're up 2.6%. The market's up 2.2%. For the year, we're up 12.6%. The market's up 19%. We're underperforming by 6.4%. So free will, non-free will, I think it's a conversation that is pretty vivid, actually, particularly in the Bay Area. I think Stanford, Sam Harris, people like that. So I would say let's put the whole of California in this equation. But it is a big conversation, and I feel it is a relevant conversation for not just intellectual academic purposes, but also actually for our fund, because we believe, and just to remind people, the purpose of this podcast series is to give people a sense of what it feels like to run a hedge fund. So fundamentally, I hope that the listeners here take away lessons, inspirations of what it feels like to run a hedge fund. This is the purpose. So if after years and years of this whole podcast series, people tell me, "Oh, thanks for giving me some ideas about either to do it or not to do it, start a hedge fund," then I think I would consider it a success. So in that sense, I think this conversation about free will, I think I often touch upon subjects that maybe some people might scratch their heads and say, well, listen, why are you doing this? Why is this a relevant conversation like free will, non-free will? Isn't this academic? Isn't this neuroscience, psychology, or whatever you want to call it? Well, of course it is. I mean, look, everything is some sort of science or some sort of fundamental concepts that maybe start at a place that is very, very far away from Wall Street and the hedge fund business. But it is part of our endeavor, part of our game, if you want, to use those concepts and apply them to business. This is our edge. This is what we at Orange Capital Partners actually do best. We are incredibly well connected with the academic world, either personally or just through the things like books and podcasts. But nevertheless, we're pretty well connected. I think we have a good sense for what the zeitgeist is in a couple of areas, not all of them. I wouldn't know what evolutionary biology is telling us about the world. I wouldn't know about, social psychology or things like that. So there are things we're not interested in, but there are a lot of things we are interested in. And they're also, I guess, along the lines of what we care about, which is machine learning, intelligence, computation, things along those lines. Digitizing life sciences, what is intelligence, what is genetic intelligence, what is human intelligence? All those questions are super, super important to us. So let's get back to the question of free will, non-free will, which of course tangentially touches upon intelligence, it touches upon in particular, the ability to exercise action. Are we agents or aren't we agents? And then applied to the business case, this is super, super interesting because one of the principles that we follow is based on the book, The Innovator's Dilemma. And in The Innovator's Dilemma, Clayton Christensen lays down a theory that explains why companies get disrupted. And without using the word free will, he kind of dabbles in this conversation because what he's kind of saying is that, well, it's kind of like the managers of these companies that get disrupted. So the managers of GM, which are facing Tesla, they don't have a choice. It's not like they are lazy or they're choosing to be whatever they're doing, which is basically letting Tesla disrupt their business. It is in the nature of their business, in the nature of the incentive structure of their actual daily business, that they are led to actions which eventually allow Tesla to disrupt their business and put them out of business. This is what Clayton Christensen is saying. So he's really saying they don't have free will because the environment is forcing them into a situation, the environment being their own environment. So let's say the incentive structure of an established blue chip US car company with, let's say, the pressure to hit quarterly numbers. So to keep selling what is selling, this is the main argument of Clayton Christensen, which is you have certain things that do well, and those things you're not going to give them up for new things. In other words, if the electric car is the next big thing, but your sales are big gas-guzzling SUVs, you are going to put all your efforts in gas-guzzling SUVs to push those sales and spend a lot of money on advertising and whatnot, instead of actually focusing on the electric car, and in particular also on technology such as self-driving technology. And yeah, you can buy Cruise and you can integrate Cruise, but that's not the solution. So the point here being that Christensen is saying that these managers are kind of sliding into this position without really having a choice. That's kind of what he's implying. And that's why I think this conversation is very interesting as far as also business case is concerned. So we can apply this to several realms of life. We can talk about free will. Let's say Sam Harris talks about criminal law and things like that, saying people with criminal tendencies really don't have free will in the sense that they are sick and that they have some neurological disorder and that therefore they have a problem, and we should look at them more like people that have cancer. We're not going to put people that have cancer in the gas chamber or whatever we do today with people, particularly killers that get a death sentence. And that of course rubs some people off the wrong way, saying, well, I mean, look, I'm not going to go tolerate people that do bad things. I don't care what leads them to do that. And then there's also the sort of the what is it, the EA community, the enthusiast altruist or engaged altruist community. They're really very, very aggressively trying to prevent that. They're saying we're not savages. We want to be people that actually take care of take care of these types of people. So I don't want to go into that conversation right now. My point is the following. I feel that the fundamental synthesis of both camps. So there's the Sam Harris camp, which is saying, look, you don't have free will because your thoughts just pop up in your head and you're driven by your environment. The engaged altruists are saying, well, it's the environment, like people with high testosterone or certain hormone levels and whatnot. They are almost kind of like driven into being criminals, and we should look at them more like environmentally damaged people and not as criminals per se. And then we have David Deutsch, who is not really engaging in the criminal conversation, but he's just saying, look, we are all creative people. We all exercise free will in terms of creativity, and therefore it is also our responsibility. That's not what he's saying, but this is sort of what you derive from there, is that, well, okay, fine, that means also you're accountable for your actions. And this is the key. this is now, I want to lay down my thesis about this conversation. It's the following. I think that first and foremost, we are accountable for our own actions. And this is not a neurological or scientific statement. This is simply a political statement. This is a statement that this is how I want to organize the society that I live in. You're accountable for your actions. And here's why I think this is justifiable. It's because I believe that we do exercise free will. However, we exercise free will relative to what the environment throws at us. The environment throws at us problems that we have to solve. And that's where I'm very David Deutschian. We are always exposed to problems all the time. And when I say environment, I don't mean save the trees environment. This is part of it. I mean generally, any kind of environment. We are exposed to the environment, and we are, in a Darwinian way, continuously solving problems. And the guys who solve the problems better, they win. Those who don't, they lose. That's in general the way I see it. So that's why I think we exercise free will in terms of adapting ourselves to the environment. This is where the free will comes in, and the lack of free will is that we don't have a choice in how to deal with the environment. We don't have a choice in what kind of environment we're facing. The environment is an external entity. The environment is a vector that we don't control, simply because it's too complex. We don't control the environment, period. I mean, that probably warrants its own podcast now. Okay, what is the environment? Do we really control the environment? Somebody like, let's say, people like Lenin, Marx, Martin Luther King, Napoleon, whatnot. I mean, they took matters in their own hands and changed the environment. Of course, you can do that, but even that is, again, a creative act where you just take matters in your own hand and you change your mind. That's one way to act. The point is that you are incentivized through natural selection, through the innate desire to continuously act in some sort of optimization function way. I don't want to go into details now what that means, but let's just leave it at we're trying to optimize something, and that something is that we take the environment and then we optimize our actions relative to the environment. If I'm faced on the street with a guy that attacks me, it's not my choice. I don't have the luxury to not engage with the guy. So in that sense, I don't have free will. I do have free will in what kind of creative actions I choose. Do I use MMA to fight? Do I run away? Do I kill him with my gun? I don't know, whatever it is. That is my own choice. As a business, now let's apply to the business which I think I'm most excited about. So let's apply this whole situation to the business case. Let's talk about this. So you're GM, Tesla comes on the scene. What is Tesla doing? They're changing the car business. They're delivering a better, faster, cheaper car, and you are being disrupted. You don't have a choice. You have to engage. You can't not. Well, not engaging is a choice too, of course. There's no such thing as no choice. Even doing nothing is a choice. However, here is where the free will, the creativity, the David Deutschian view of the world kicks in. This is what David Deutsch talks about when he talks about creativity, about the multiverse, the ability to anything is possible, all those questions and answers that he comes solving a problem. This is where Popper comes in, which is error correction. So let's say if GM has a structure in the company where they continuously iterate, and that is the culture of the company. Just relentless drive to iterate, which is just another word for innovation. If that is your culture, well, then Tesla will just be one more vector that you iterate around, and you will find a solution very quickly. But if the culture is not such, if the management at GM chooses to have a culture of preservation, incrementalism, and those sort of things, well, then Tesla will be an annoyance, a nuisance, something you don't want to deal with because it's very inconvenient and it's very costly to change the whole structure that you've built. And in that sense, that is a creative choice. That is your own creative choice how to deal with this particular issue, which is, let's say, a disruptor coming into play. That is not something where this is not a neurological, biological, whatever determinism. So this is where I am completely in disagreement, let's say, with somebody like Sam Harris. In that sense, I don't agree with him that, well, this is just given. There's nothing I can do. Yes, I am very David Deutsche here. You're a GM management board meeting in 2013. There's the Model S in the market. It is almost clear that this car will disrupt your landscape. What do you do? This is a creative choice. This is a choice where you can actually influence. You can have influence on the outcome. You can change the trajectory of your own company relative to the competition, which is, in this case, Tesla. So to summarize, I think the question of free will is a very important question in many ways, but in particular in the business world, it is very, very important because like I said, the problem with free will, as far as businesses are concerned, is what kind of creative action do you take to answer a competitive threat? This is the fundamental. This is what every investor should be asking themselves when it comes to investment into companies. And you can't. That's where we disagree with Clayton Christensen. We don't just say, well, it's given. There's nothing we can do. In fact, this is an insert now, and maybe it adds a little bit to the confusion here, but what I'm going to say now might almost contradict what I just said. And here's the thing. What we actually believe at Orange Capital Partners is that Clayton Christensen is wrong in saying that disruption, he's right, of course. He's saying disruption, the theory of disruption is a theory of competitive response. And that the competitive response in a disruptive case is such that the incumbents do nothing until it's too late. Kind of, I'm simplifying now. And then he has an explanation for why that is happening, and he's using things like, the compensation of salespeople, the incentive structure of the company, and et cetera, et cetera. What we're saying is that, in fact, it's even deeper than that. The problem with disruption is that companies don't have the ability to respond because disruptors enter the market with a whole new cost structure. And changing the cost structure is the most difficult thing for any kind of company. Even it is the most inhuman thing to do. Even if I ask you to trade down, let's say, live in a cheaper apartment, spend less money on food, spend less money on the school of your kids, that is the hardest thing to do. So lowering the cost structure of a company is the hardest thing to do. And the crux of disruption is defined as offering a product which is superior at a lower cost structure. That's why we also said in several podcasts that the long-term success of Tesla depends on several vectors on the offensive side, for example, better cars, better batteries, and better AI, but it also depends on the cost structure. That's why we're very happy with the $25,000 car. We said that several times, that we believe that China is the big question mark here, and that the $25,000 car is an answer to the threat that Chinese competition might pose to Tesla. Because you don't want to be caught as any company, Tesla or GM or whoever, you cannot be caught, you must not be caught in a situation where somebody else comes in with a lower cost structure, offering a product which is similar to yours, because that is a recipe for disaster. So in that sense, you as a company now have, I think that's where, again, David Deutsch comes in. You have the free will. you can exercise free will in finding a creative solution for this particular problem. And the creative solution is that you find ways to have a flexible cost structure, or the way we see it is the most important thing is to have an adaptive company structure where you can quickly self-assemble teams and knowledge creation resources towards problems that you deem important from a competitive perspective. This is the way we see it. It sounds a little bit theoretical now. I think we haven't spent a whole lot of time in practical terms understanding, let's say, what kind of organization that entails. But I think one thing we know for sure is that it is absolutely crucial for a company to continuously be able to hire people with innovative skills, with skills that entail error correction and iteration. This is the key. So in that sense, I think we're practical enough. And we've also spoken about the problem of hiring such people, because the legacy academic system that these people come from is often culturally very different. So you do have to hire, in a nutshell, you have to hire from Stanford and MIT, because that's where the most expertise is being taught. But the culture of those institutions actually is very bad, because it's elitist. It's not about iteration. It's not about error correction. It's about preserving the status, and that's very, very dangerous. So those are sort of the fundamental problems that now disruptors face. But the point that I'm trying to make in this particular series is, and again, this is the second summary now. I'm sorry, this is getting a bit longer than I thought. The point here is the following. Do we have free will or not? My answer is free will is the wrong question. The question is, how do we react to environmental challenges? How do we solve problems that the environment throws at us? And in that sense, we have free will in choosing what creative steps we take. We don't have free will because the environment is not something we control. In that sense, the free will question is sort of a hybrid answer. The answer to the question is hybrid, because on the one hand, we don't have free will because it's the environment, it's our genetics, our neurological, all that stuff that Sam Harris is saying. We do agree, but we also think that David Deutsch has a point, because we do have a choice to creatively react to the environment. So in that sense, our answer is the free will question is, the answer to the free will question is a Darwinian answer. We react to the environment with creative solutions. The problems that the environment poses, that's the creativity that we exercise as humans. And that's where also the gist of success and wealth creation lies. Thank you.